On the night of the 4th of July, 1969, in Vallejo, California, Darlene Ferrin and Mike Maggio go out on a date at a place called Lover's Lane. While there, the couple gets alarmed after seeing a car seemingly stalking them. Eventually, a man gets out of the car, and as he approaches, the couple relaxes, thinking he's a cop checking up on them. Much to their surprise, the man starts shooting at them. Not long after that, the shooter calls 911 and reports the crime he committed to the police. When the cops arrive, they find Darlene dead, but Mike is alive. 4 weeks later, a letter arrives at the office of the San Francisco Chronicle newspaper. It's a letter from someone claiming to be behind the shooting of Darlene and Mike in Vallejo. The letter also comes with an encrypted message and a demand from the killer, saying he will kill again if his letter isn't published. Paul Avery, the Chronicle's journalist and crime reporter, immediately starts investigating. Robert Graysmith, the political cartoonist of the Chronicle, also gets interested in the letter, especially the encrypted message. It doesn't take long for Robert to accurately guess that the killer's identity is not in the letter. He tells Paul about it, but the journalist doesn't take him seriously. Paul even excludes Robert from getting details about the crime. The Chronicle publishes the encrypted message, and the masses try to solve it. Eventually, a history teacher manages to crack the encryption. The killer starts sending more cipher letters to the Chronicle and takes on the name Zodiac. Paul starts sharing more information with Robert after he decodes the message. When asked how he did it, Robert reveals he read books from the library and that he loves puzzles in general. Robert discovers that the Zodiac is referencing the movie The Most Dangerous Man. It's about hunting for the world's most dangerous prey, man. The Zodiac strikes again on September 1969. This time in Napa County as Lake Berryessa. Zodiac pretends to rob the couple, Brian Hotnell and Cecilia Shepard, having a date by the lake. He ties them both up after they cooperate with his demands. Just when the couple thinks they'll be safe, Zodiac suddenly starts to stab them viciously. Cecilia Shepard loses her life, but Brian Hotnell survives. Again, Zodiac reports his crime to the police and sends a letter to the Chronicle about it. The Zodiac claims another victim 2 weeks later. This time it's a cab driver named Paul Stein in San Francisco City's Presidio Heights district. Zodiac also sends another letter to the Chronicle and a piece of Stein's blood-soaked shirt. The San Francisco Police Department also sends detectives David Toski and William Armstrong to handle the case. The Zodiac sends another letter. This time, he threatens to attack kids inside city school buses. At first, the people working on the case didn't want to publish the letter because it might cause panic in the city. However, they changed their minds after fearing that the Zodiac might do something worse if they didn't meet his demands. With the letter's release, the citizens start panicking. The police, including Dave and Will, get busy answering phones in their office. Robert also gets worried about his son. He drives him to school instead of letting him ride the school bus. Less than 2 weeks after the cab driver incident, someone who claims to be the Zodiac calls a talk show, requesting to speak with Melvin Belli. The request gets granted, and the police set everything up. During the call, Melvin asks the Zodiac his name and problem. The Zodiac says his name is Sam, and he's scared of going to the gas chamber. He also tells Melvin that he has severe headaches. At one point during the call, everyone hears a scream, which puts them on high alert. The Zodiac drops the call after a while to prevent the police from tracing it. When he calls again, Melvin lies about not tracing the call and asks if they can meet and talk somewhere. The Zodiac agrees and says they'll meet in a church in Daly City. Melvin and the police go to the location, but the Zodiac doesn't show up. Instead, the authorities learn that the call came from someone inside a mental institution. On top of that, Brian Hotnell, from the Lake Berryessa incident, listens to the voice and confirms it's not from the man that attacked them. Between the remainder of 1969 to 1970, the Chronicle and Melvin Belli receive more letters from the Zodiac. His letters claim responsibility for several other incidents and taunt the police. Eventually, Paul starts questioning the Zodiac's truthfulness and intentions, so the Chronicle decides to stop publishing his letters. Paul also talks to Robert about the gun sight symbol on the Zodiac letters. He thinks it's a symbol copied from the Zodiac brand of watches. Paul then starts writing several interesting stories about Zodiac. Eventually, the Zodiac rewards him for the stories by sending him a letter and another piece of the cab driver's blood-soaked shirt. In his desire to investigate the killer more, Paul meets up with an unknown source in Riverside, California. After that, he calls Robert, convinced that he has finally found strong evidence on the first Zodiac victim. It doesn't take long for the news about Paul's discovery to reach the press and the police. Dave and Will go to Riverside to investigate more and meet up with Paul. While the evidence looks almost similar, the detectives think it doesn't match that of the Zodiac. Eventually, Paul's story succeeds in convincing everyone but Dave. Following the release of Paul's article, many people start claiming they know the Zodiac's identity. After interviewing a series of potential suspects, they find a promising one named Arthur Lee Allen. Dave and Will question him, but it doesn't lead to anything groundbreaking. Since they suspect Lee is strong enough, they decide to interview his family, who, in turn, hand over Lee's handwriting samples for the police to study. The handwriting sample is taken for examination and compared to the Zodiac. No match could be found between them. Sometime later, after learning that Lee had moved to Santa Rosa, Dave and Will manage to search his trailer with the help of a warrant issued by the Santa Rosa PD. When Lee arrives home, they check his fingerprints and take fresh handwriting samples. However, none of them match the information they have on file about the Zodiac. Dave gets frustrated since he believes that Lee is the Zodiac killer. 1975. 4 years have passed, and life has changed for everyone. Robert has started a new family after remarrying. Paul is now working for the Sacramento Bee after quitting the Chronicle. Meanwhile, Dave gets caught off guard after Will tells him he's leaving homicide and moving to the fraud department. As for the Zodiac, he has been quiet throughout these past 4 years. Robert's new wife, Melanie, reminds him about all the Zodiac stuff he's collected for years. As a result, Robert visits Paul and informs him about wanting to write a book on the Zodiac. Robert gets disappointed after Paul shows he isn't interested and says he lost all of the information related to the Zodiac. After his talk with Paul, Robert goes to Dave. While Dave claims he can't help, he quietly tells him to go to Napa and ask Ken Narlow. Robert does what Dave tells him. After a brief moment of silence, Ken lets him check the evidence on the Darlene Ferrin and Mike Maggio case. After his investigation, Robert reaches out to Dave again. This time, he tells him that Darlene had several admirers, and the Zodiac might be one of them. It seems that Darlene received a suspicious phone call from a man breathing heavily on the other line the night she got murdered. Knowing that the killer might know Darlene, Robert wants to meet Darlene's sister. However, Dave tells him to reach out to Melvin Belly instead, so he does. While waiting for Melvin, one of his housekeepers tells Robert that she talked to the Zodiac. According to her, it was when Melvin wasn't home. She says the Zodiac told her he had to kill that day because it was his birthday. With this new information, Robert narrows down the dates from the 18th of December to the 20th. He also keeps Dave's recommendation in mind and checks the Department of Justice for more information. Sadly, he doesn't find anything useful there. Sometime later, Robert receives a call saying that the Zodiac killer is someone named Rick Marshall. It seems a man named Bob Vaughn has film canisters that can prove that Rick is the Zodiac. Robert visits Sherwood Memorial to talk about the fingerprints and handwriting samples of the Zodiac. During that time, Sherwood says that a man named Wallace Benny told him about Rick Marshall being the Zodiac. Robert gets stumped, shocked that the man who called him also called Sherwood. Meanwhile, Dave rushes into the Chronicle after learning they received the first new Zodiac letter in 4 years. Strangely enough, some accuse Dave of faking the letter in the name of publicity. He then gets kicked out of the homicide division. Robert tries to talk to him, but Dave refuses to answer his questions related to Rick Marshall. Robert goes to Napa again and speaks with Ken Narlow. Ken says he interviewed Rick before but didn't acquire his handwriting samples or fingerprints. Hoping to find Rick, Robert calls Sherwood to get Wallace Benny's number. After getting in touch with Penny, he sends Robert one of the posters Rick made for a silent movie house. Robert then takes it to Sherwood for examination. While he sees small similarities to the Zodiac, he says more information is needed to properly conclude it's a match. The Zodiac case consumes Robert's life. He loses his job at the Chronicle and flees his house with his wife and kids. Fearing the Zodiac, he also starts receiving phone calls with someone breathing heavily on the other line. Despite that, Robert continues to look for Linda, Darlene Ferrin's sister. He also gets in touch with Bob Vaughn to ask him for help. It turns out that Bob knew Rick a long time ago as the theater projectionist. When Robert asks about the posters, Bob reveals that he made them, not Rick. Once more, Robert hits a dead end in his investigations. After a long search, Robert finally finds Linda in prison. He meets up with her and asks about the painting party that Darlene threw. She talks about a creepy man that attended the party, and Robert insists it's Rick. But Linda says she's sure it's not him. Disappointed, Robert stands up to leave. On his way out, Linda says the man's name is Lee. Realizing she was talking about Arthur Lee Allen all along, Robert rushes to Dave's house late at night. Although Dave isn't too keen about the surprise visit, he goes with Robert to get some food. They then talk about all the people suspected to be the Zodiac. They eventually think it might be Arthur Lee Allen, but Dave says they don't have any evidence to prove that. Robert ends up speechless after hearing what Dave thinks. He then tells Dave that even if they can't prove that Arthur is the Zodiac, it doesn't mean it isn't true. In response, Dave encouraged him to finish writing the book about the Zodiac. Robert nods, and Dave pays for their meal before leaving. A few years pass, and it's now December 1983. Robert walks into a hardware store in Vallejo. To his surprise, he encounters Arthur Lee Allen. Arthur now works as a clerk in that store and wears a name tag that says Lee. The two silently stare at each other for a while until Robert walks out of the store. 7.5 years pass, and it's the 16th of August, 1991. The police invite Mike Maggio and show him several mugshots of men they suspect could be the Zodiac. Mike points out one of them, and it's Arthur Lee Allen. The investigator tells Mike to use a scale of 1 to 10 and describe how sure he is about Arthur being the Zodiac, and Mike says an 8. He then reaffirms that he is sure that Arthur is the man that shot him all those years ago. Following Mike's identification of him, the authorities schedule a meeting with Arthur. Unfortunately, Arthur had a fatal heart attack before the meeting happened. By 2002, a partial DNA profile was developed from a 33-year-old Zodiac envelope. It doesn't match Allen. Despite that, San Francisco and Vallejo investigators refused to rule him out as a suspect. The San Francisco Police Department then deactivated its Zodiac investigation in 2004. As of 2007, the Zodiac case remains open in Napa County, Solano County, and Vallejo. Arthur Lee Allen still remains the prime suspect.
Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like. It really helps the channel.